Mark and Lisa Thompson looked like the perfect couple to everyone around them until a routine DNA test shattered their world and exposed a betrayal so deep it sparked a cold, calculated revenge that would soon go viral and ruin more than just a marriage. He was a firefighter in Austin, Texas, the kind of man people trusted instantly. He worked long hours but never complained, always returning home with a tired smile and arms open for his wife. Lisa, his high school sweetheart, had grown into a caring and warm-hearted kindergarten teacher. He noticed Ava's features developing and something tugged at the edges of his mind. Her hair was lighter than his, and her skin more pale than either of theirs. Lisa began working late, even though the school year was ending. She claimed she had end-of-year reports to finish or faculty meetings that stretched past dinner time. Mark didn't question it at first. She had always been committed to her job. But one night, while doing laundry, he noticed a blouse in the hamper that smelled of cologne, one that wasn't his. It was faint but unmistakable. He tried to sleep that night but tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling while Lisa slept peacefully beside him. By morning he had made up his mind. He'd find himself staring blankly at burning buildings, alarms blaring in his ears, his thoughts far away. At home, every laugh from Lisa sounded hollow, every kiss a reminder of what he feared. He watched her more closely, her every gesture like a puzzle piece. He found an at-home paternity test online and ordered it using a prepaid card so it wouldn't appear on their shared bank statements. Her eyes, bright and unfamiliar, didn't match his or Lisa's. She smiled more that week than she had in months. And for a moment, Mark almost regretted taking the step. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. He collected the DNA samples when Lisa wasn't looking Ava from a baby hair stuck to her blanket and his own with a simple swab. He sent the kid away and waited. He pushed the thoughts away. Genetics were strange, after all. His mother had blue eyes, didn't she? She casually mentioned Ava's blood type. It wasn't the same as his. Something about it didn't add up? But the words inside cracked his world in two. The results were final and unambiguous. Ava was not his biological child. He didn't scream. He simply sat down in the living room and stared ahead, numb and frozen. Every moment he had lived over the past year, every late-night feeding, every whispered promise, every tiny sock folded with love, was now tainted. His life, the one he thought he'd built with care and trust, was no longer real. He didn't say anything out loud, but nodded and left the clinic with a strange tightness in his chest. Quiet, calculated, and fueled not by hatred but by the need for truth. He didn't want answers, he wanted consequences. And he would make sure she felt every ounce of the betrayal she had forced upon him. And Lisa's father had light hair. It was probably nothing. They'd built their lives together from scratch, bought their first house in a friendly suburb, shared dreams of traveling, neighbors brought meals, and Lisa's parents visited often. Mark noticed she became oddly distant when they arrived, retreating to the bedroom or taking phone calls outside. She kept her phone on silent and never left it unattended. She set new passwords on her laptop. When Mark walked into the room unexpectedly, she'd close browser tabs too quickly or minimize windows with trembling fingers. Her behavior wasn't aggressive, just quietly evasive. When he asked about it, she brushed it off, just stress, she said, or baby blues. But she never quite met his eyes, and spent quiet evenings in front of the TV with takeout containers balanced on their laps. From the outside, their life looked perfect. Mark thought so too. Mark Thompson had always believed in simple things, honesty, loyalty, and the kind of love that could weather anything. They had been trying for almost 2 years, and just as he began to accept it might not happen, the test turned positive. Based on genetics, Ava's blood type didn't make sense, not if he was the father. Lisa cried when she told him, and Mark held her in stunned silence, overwhelmed by a sense of gratitude. He painted the nursery himself in soft pastel colors and spent hours researching the safest cribs and car seats. Every appointment, he was there, holding Lisa's hand and asking questions the doctors had already answered twice. When baby Ava arrived on a sunny morning in March, Mark was the first to hold her. She was tiny, wrapped in pink blankets, her eyes shut tight and fists curled like little seashells. He fell in love instantly. When they found out Lisa was pregnant, Mark was overjoyed. Lisa seemed tired but happy, often sitting by the window with Ava in her arms, humming quietly. Mark took on more chores and stayed up for late-night feedings whenever he could. He documented everything, her first smile, her tiny hiccups, even the way she sneezed. It was all so new and so beautiful. As the weeks passed, their home became filled with bottles, lullabies, and the faint scent of baby powder. Still, small doubts began to creep in, uninvited and unwanted. Life moved on. Mark returned to work on a reduced schedule. Then came the first real sign that something was off. He didn't say anything. He wanted to believe there was an explanation. Instead, he started watching. One afternoon, while taking Ava for her routine doctor's appointment, Mark found himself sitting alone with the pediatric nurse as she noted down the baby's vitals. The moment he got home, he pulled out his own medical records. He confirmed his blood type. Then he searched online, cross-referencing combinations. The results were disturbing. The doubt that had once been a whisper now screamed in his ears. For the next few days, he acted normal. He laughed, played with Ava, and even cooked dinner for Lisa, who seemed oddly cheered by his mood. The days that followed were some of the longest of his life. He couldn't concentrate at work. When the envelope finally arrived, he stared at it for over an hour before opening it. It was thin, clinical, and unremarkable in appearance. Mark didn't cry. But instead of confronting Lisa, Mark decided on something else. A plan. The test results sat on the kitchen counter for days, untouched after the first reading. Mark couldn't bring himself to throw them away, but he also couldn't bear to look at them again. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was a desire to understand the full picture before he made a move. Mark had always been patient, methodical in everything he did, and this time would be no different. This wasn't a fire he could put out with water. It was something that needed time to burn through completely. Every time he passed by the folded paper, he felt the weight of the betrayal sink a little deeper into his bones. There were small charges to unfamiliar places, coffee shops on the other side of town, gift stores, hotel restaurants. Nothing outrageous on its own, but the pattern painted a story. She had funded her affair with their shared money. The affair wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a strategy, a calculated move in a larger plan. And the baby-sweet, innocent Ava was a consequence of a choice Lisa had made without him. The words were burned into his memory, cold and absolute. Mark found something else, a second phone hidden beneath her clothes in the laundry basket. If Lisa ever tried to spin the story, he would have the truth ready to shatter every lie. It was powered off. He charged it secretly and unlocked it using her birth date. She had made a calculated decision to replace Mark with someone else, someone she thought was a better option. But she had wanted the comfort of stability while transitioning into her new life. So she kept Mark in the dark while building a second world just far enough away to remain hidden. Mark found Eric's ex-wife on social media and browsed through her old posts, watching closely. And soon he would make her feel the weight of every lie. Over the next few days he let it run. It captured Lisa talking on the phone late at night, whispering into her pillow. It caught her pacing the kitchen when she thought she was alone. Not through rage or violence, that wasn't his way. A file that would tell the story far better than he ever could. It seemed Eric had cheated on her too around the same time his relationship with Lisa began. Inside were hundreds of messages between her and the man from the house. His name was Eric Reynolds. They had been seeing each other for over a year. But one thing was certain: when the moment came, there would be no doubt, no denial. The truth would hit like a tidal wave, sudden and impossible to escape. There were photos to Lisa in the mirror, at the park with Ava, even lying in bed next to Eric. They had been saved manually, as if she wanted to keep them hidden. The messages weren't between her and a friend, or even her supposed lover. They were between Lisa and a divorced lawyer. They dated back almost 6 months. She had inquired about custody, property division, and even alimony. There was no mistake, no possible error. The child he had cradled in his arms, the baby he had sung to sleep, and fed with shaking, exhausted hands, wasn't his. He didn't want revenge for the sake of it. The photos outside the house, the screenshots of her messages, the odd bank transactions, the fake work events. He printed them and kept them organized in a locked drawer at the fire station where she wouldn't think to look. Every piece added another layer to the puzzle. He wanted justice in a way that wouldn't just destroy Lisa's deception, it would expose it completely. He didn't confront Lisa, not yet. Something in him held back. He began collecting clues in silence. Every lie she told, he now saw in sharper focus. When she said she was working late, he'd check the school's website and find no listed events. He started tracking her movements using the Find My Phone feature they had set up years ago. She didn't know he still had access. Most nights she was at school or home, but twice she'd stopped in neighborhoods Mark didn't recognize. One was a residential area nearly 30 minutes away, too far for a casual visit. He drove there on a Wednesday night. Lisa had said she was staying late for report cards. Mark arrived just in time to see her car parked in front of a modest one-story house. The porch light was on. A man opened the door and stepped outside just as Lisa walked up. They hugged. Mark's stomach twisted. She walked inside and the door closed behind her. He sat in the darkness of his truck, watching. 2 hours passed. She didn't come out. Mark took photos from a distance, not for proof but for clarity, for himself. This wasn't paranoia, it was real. And the man, whoever he was, had become part of a web Lisa had carefully spun for months, maybe years. Back at home, Mark dug deeper. He checked their bank records, looking for anything unusual. Then he found something he hadn't expected. On her laptop, in a folder labeled Work Docs, Mark discovered screenshots of text messages. That discovery hit harder than anything else. She had been planning to leave him long before the baby arrived. Mark felt hollowed out, but he wasn't angry. Not in the way people expect. It wasn't a firestorm. It was a cold, steady resolve. He started documenting everything. One night, while Lisa was in the shower, Mark didn't delete anything. He backed it all up, storing it in a secure cloud account under a new email address. He researched Eric, a recently divorced man who also worked at the same school. No children, clean background. It all fit too well. Lisa hadn't fallen into an affair. But what she didn't expect was that Mark was paying attention now. He installed a hidden camera in the hallway smoke detector. It had motion detection and uploaded clips directly to his private cloud. Mark added each recording to the folder. Everything she said and did was now part of a file too large to ignore. He didn't know yet how or when he would reveal it all. And when it did, she would finally understand what it felt like to be betrayed. Mark's routine became a carefully constructed act. Every day, he smiled when necessary, laughed when expected, and played the role of a loving husband without flaw. But behind that mask, he was unraveling the full extent of the life Lisa had kept hidden from him. This time, he parked a few streets away and walked. It was early afternoon. Mark waited behind a tree near the house, watching. Lisa's car pulled up right on time. She stepped out with a small bag and rang the bell. Eric answered almost immediately. They embraced like people who didn't have anything to hide. It made Mark's skin crawl. And she was just waiting for the right time to discard him like a used page. He took photos again, clearer ones this time, and noted the time down in his journal. A quiet man named Daniel, recommended by a friend at the firehouse. Daniel was discreet and professional. Mark handed over everything he had and asked for one thing: confirmation and coverage. He wanted timestamps, surveillance, photos, and a background check on Eric. If Lisa and Eric had been sneaking around, there would be a history. Daniel promised to dig deep. He had already uncovered her affair, the betrayal of the paternity test, and her plans for a quiet, calculated exit from the marriage. Inside was the kind of truth that cut deeper than he had expected. Lisa sat alone in the nursery, holding Ava, whispering softly. Eric and Lisa had checked into a hotel 5 months before Ava was born. The check-in logs had both their names. Security footage showed them walking in late at night. Just hold on a little longer. Mommy has a better life for you. There were text messages Mark hadn't seen before, ones Eric had sent to a friend about starting over with a new family. She truly believed he would disappear quietly, that he would hand over the child she had lied about, that she could take everything and rewrite the story in her favor. Worse yet, there was a joint bank account with small deposits. It had Lisa's name on it. When the time was right, he would send it to everyone. He began copying the files onto a hard drive. He created an email list: Lisa's parents, Eric's employer, the school board. Even a few trusted friends who had always supported him. It showed Lisa walking into Eric's home. A timestamp in the corner. It faded into a screenshot of the paternity test. Then clips from the home camera, including the kitchen phone call and the nursery whisper. Finally, the video ended on a photo of Ava in Eric's arms. He approached an older woman watering her plants across the street and casually asked about the area, pretending he was house hunting. Not just sneaking around for fun, but building a backup life in the shadows. A life funded with money Mark helped earn, built on lies Mark never saw coming. But the silence around him felt deafening. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was existential. His role had been replaced. The life he thought he had was borrowed time. Lisa was becoming increasingly careless. One night, she was on the phone in the kitchen, pacing in circles. The mic picked up her voice clearly. He cooked dinner, held Ava, and even bought flowers one evening. Lisa looked surprised but pleased. She didn't suspect a thing. And every night, the camera continued to record her calls, her texts, and the moments she thought were private. Daniel had recovered photos from a public cloud storage folder linked to Eric's email photos Lisa had taken and uploaded. Pictures of Ava in Eric's arms, the baby giggling while he made faces. Lisa smiling beside them on a picnic blanket in a park Mark had never been to. They looked like a family, a real one. She spoke freely, mentioning the man who lived alone in the blue house and his pretty lady friend who visited often. Mark smiled politely and walked away, the confirmation cutting deeper than he had anticipated. Now he wanted everything, every detail, every secret she had buried. He took a day off from work and drove to Eric Reynolds' neighborhood again. After Lisa went inside, Mark walked the neighborhood, trying to gather information. Back home, he reviewed all the footage captured from the hidden camera in their house. He's still clueless. Honestly, it's just a matter of time. Once Ava's older, we'll make the move. I'm not ready for the fallout yet, she said. That was all Mark needed. She was already planning the next chapter of her life with someone else, one that didn't include him. Mark's rage simmered under the surface, but his actions remained calm. He had started recording a diary, not one for emotion but for facts. Dates, times, screenshots, bank transactions, videos, all of it documented. It wasn't just about confronting Lisa anymore. He wanted her deception to be undeniable to her parents, their friends, even the court, if it came to that. He reached out to a private investigator to cover the rest. A week later, Mark got a file in return. They had been planning a life together all along. But the most devastating piece wasn't financial, it was emotional. Mark stared at those images for hours. His hands didn't shake. His breathing didn't quicken. He didn't confront Lisa. Instead, he decided to let her hang herself with her own carelessness. He returned to acting normal. Then, one evening, Mark watched a moment that changed everything. Soon we'll be out of here, baby girl. Mark paused the video and stared. It was then that Mark finalized his plan. Not a confrontation, not a fight, but something that would expose her from the inside out. But he didn't send anything yet. Timing mattered. He wanted to catch them when they least expected it. He created a video, short, simple, and silent. The final frame. The truth always comes out. Mark saved it under a file name only he would recognize. For now, he returned to silence, but every move was calculated. Every breath a countdown. The truth was no longer a secret. It was a storm waiting to break. The morning Lisa left for work with a cheerful kiss on Mark's cheek, everything was already in motion. Mark stood in the doorway, watching her drive off, and then slowly closed the door behind him. He took only what he had brought into the marriage: his clothes, personal belongings, tools, the old guitar his father gave him, and photos of his family from before he met Lisa. The wedding pictures stayed behind. It was direct, simple, and brutally honest. He placed it on the kitchen table. Underneath the DNA test and the first printed still from the hidden camera video, Lisa in the nursery, whispering to Ava about their new life. He uploaded the video file to a new anonymous account and scheduled the emails. Every message had the same subject line: a story you deserve to know. He drove 4 hours north to a small town in Oklahoma where an old colleague had offered him a temporary room above a garage. The hallway echoed, the air was still. She called out Mark's name, confused, then checked each room. When she entered the nursery and saw the empty closet, her heart stopped. On the crib lay the stack of keepsakes, perfectly arranged. Her eyes scanned the items, dread rising like a tide. His number had been disconnected. She tried again from her work phone. Nothing. She emailed. The messages bounced back. She checked his social media. All accounts were gone. Lisa tried to explain, but there were no excuses strong enough to soften the truth. Everyone had seen the video. Everyone knew. No questions asked. Mark didn't want comfort. He wanted distance. And as he drove, he didn't look back. He kept his head down, worked odd shifts at a local firehouse, and slowly built a quiet rhythm. He spoke to no one about what had happened. There were no updates, no revenge posts online. And for Mark, that was enough. His justice had already been delivered, clean and complete. She was placed on leave from her job pending an investigation into workplace conduct. Eric was let go from his position without warning. The school district released a statement acknowledging the incident but keeping the details private. Whispers spread quickly among teachers and parents alike. She was innocent, caught in the web of adult decisions she had no control over. He wondered what kind of life she would grow up in. He wondered if she'd ever learn the truth. Maybe one day, when she was older, she'd ask questions no one could answer. Maybe she'd find the video archived online somewhere, passed around on forums like an urban legend. Or maybe she'd forget him entirely. Her face turned pale. The DNA test slipped from her grip and fluttered to the floor. What mattered to him now was peace, the kind that came from finally seeing things for what they were. He hadn't just lost a wife or a child. He had lost the illusion that had been built around him for years. And though it left scars, it also gave him freedom. The photo on top hit her harder than the words. She sank into a chair, breathless. He didn't replay memories or second-guess his choices. He simply watched the highway stretch ahead and welcomed the unknown. The video was set to autosend at 7 p.m. that evening. By then, Mark would be long gone. Colleagues from school texted cryptic questions. By 8 p.m., the school board had received the video through an anonymous tip. Eric, too, had received it at work where his boss called him into a meeting before he could even leave for the day. So did all the gifts they'd exchanged over the years. The souvenirs from trips that now felt like fiction, and the memory books filled with moments that had lost all their truth. It clicked shut with a sound that felt final, like the turning of a page. That day, Mark was not going to work. He had taken leave under the pretense of needing rest after long shifts. But in truth, this day had been carefully planned for weeks. She opened one, then another. Her screen filled with the video Mark had made. She watched herself walk into Eric's home, time-stamped and irrefutable. Then the paternity test. Then the clips from inside their own home. Her voice on tape, her secrets laid bare. He worked quickly, always looking over his shoulder, even though he knew Lisa wouldn't return for hours. When the last box was secured, he walked through the empty house one final time. The silence was louder now. Rooms that once echoed with laughter and soft baby sounds now felt like hollow shells. The house had become a symbol of betrayal, and Mark felt no sadness leaving it behind. He moved with quiet precision. Every item he packed had meaning. He packed Ava's keepsakes too, just not to take with him, but to leave behind as a message. The onesies he had bought when he first found out he'd be a father. The stuffed bear with "Daddy's Girl" embroidered on the foot. The baby album with his handwriting in every caption. All of it was left in the crib, placed neatly like evidence at a crime scene. Then came the last piece, the letter. He had written it days before, revised it 3 times, and finally settled on a version that was neither angry nor forgiving. With everything packed, Mark loaded the moving van he had rented in cash. Before locking up, he retrieved the hard drive from its hiding place and plugged it into the laptop. He left the house exactly as he found it that morning, except emptier, cleaner, like a stage cleared after the final act. He didn't go to a hotel or a friend's place. At 7:03 p.m., Lisa walked into the house and knew something was wrong. Then she saw the paper on the kitchen table, her name in bold at the top. She picked it up, hands shaking, and read the letter. A notification buzzed on her phone, then another, then 10 more. her inbox flooded with messages subject lines all the same. By 7:30 p.m., the damage was already spreading. Her parents called, her sister messaged, stunned and confused. At 9 p.m., Lisa tried calling Mark. The call didn't go through. The next morning, her world had collapsed. Lisa's parents came over, furious and ashamed. Her father barely spoke. Her mother cried quietly in the car. Meanwhile, Mark settled into his new temporary life. He still thought of Ava often, not with anger, but with sorrow. Mark didn't need to know. The truth had done what it was meant to do. It shattered lies, exposed betrayal, and left behind only what was real. 3 months had passed since Mark disappeared from the life he once knew. The house on Rosewood Drive sat quiet now. The lawn had grown untidy, the blinds were always closed, and the mailbox filled up faster than it used to. The neighborhood, once full of waving neighbors and weekend cookouts, avoided Lisa Thompson now. She rarely left the house. She stopped checking social media after her inbox filled with hate messages and anonymous comments. The internet had branded her a liar, a manipulator, a cautionary tale. He was living in a modest 2-bedroom rental in rural Oklahoma, working as a part-time mechanic and part-time firefighter. Whether she was walking yet, if she had begun saying her first words. His heart ached, not with regret, but with the emptiness left behind. He had loved her fully, even though she wasn't his. That love hadn't disappeared, it had just been forced underground. A sealed vault with no key. His days were quiet, filled with manual work and long walks. The quiet suited him. The photos, the videos, the documentation, he kept them all stored on a drive, locked in a safe. She sold it to a young couple who knew nothing of what had happened there. His arms around her on vacations, the ultrasound picture framed on their fridge, Mark asleep in a chair with Ava resting on his chest. She'd stare at them, wondering how it all fell apart. How a single decision could tear through an entire life like a blade. She and Ava moved into a small rental closer to her parents, trying to rebuild some version of normal. Her days were filled with apologies she never spoke out loud and futures that would never happen. Eric faded from her life not long after Mark disappeared. When asked, he'd simply say he used to be a different man in a different place with a different life. And that was enough. They didn't argue. They simply drifted, the way people do when the bond that once held them together dissolves in shame. Not out of spite, but as a record. A truth that belonged to him, something no one could twist or rewrite. He never looked at it. He just needed to know it existed. The video was taken down from most platforms after privacy complaints, but the memory remained. People still remembered. Lisa still remembered. And the quiet aftermath of a truth exposed not with shouting or violence, but with cold, undeniable evidence. And Mark, even as he moved forward, carried the weight of it in quiet corners of his mind. There were no questions about his past, no curious looks, no whispers behind his back. There was no return name on the envelope, but the handwriting was familiar. He stared at it for hours before opening it. Inside was a single photo of Ava. They trickled in slowly: grief, anger, confusion, then something softer. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. A piece of his life still existed, even if it was far away and no longer his. She was sitting in a park holding a stuffed bear, the same one he had left in the crib. She looked older, bigger, her hair pulled into tiny pigtails. Behind her was a handwritten note on plain white paper. It was short. He was just another man trying to stay busy, and that was all he wanted. But what hurt most wasn't what strangers thought, it was what Mark had done, not the leaving, not even the video. It was how thoroughly he had severed her from his world. He simply placed the photo inside a drawer next to the safe, then returned to work the next day like nothing had changed. That was how he handled things now, quietly, steadily, without drama. Some pain couldn't be undone. It could only be managed. She had expected anger, maybe confrontation. But instead, she had been erased. Whispers followed her at the grocery store. Parents requested different teachers for their children. She asks about you when she sees your picture. I'm sorry for everything. The few who did made it clear they wanted no part of the situation. She even tried contacting Mark's sister, who responded with only 2 words, "Don't bother." The video hadn't just gone viral among friends and family, it had escaped into the broader world. Shared on forums, passed through private messages, reposted under titles like "Wife Exposed by DNA Test, Husband's Epic Exit." It became part of a digital folklore no one involved could escape. Lisa resigned from her teaching job 2 weeks after the scandal broke. Officially, it was listed as personal reasons. Unofficially, it was clear she was pushed out. Eric never got another job at a school. His name was flagged during background checks, and though no criminal charges had been filed, no district wanted to deal with the risk. The two of them drifted into silence, both retreating from the public view. Their affair had destroyed more than their marriages. It had destroyed their reputations and whatever fantasy of a future they had imagined. Behind closed doors, Lisa struggled to piece together a new routine. Lisa attempted to reach out again. She tried contacting people who might know where Mark went, old coworkers, mutual friends, but most didn't respond. Meanwhile, Mark had settled into a small routine far from Texas. At night, he still thought of Ava. He wondered what she looked like now. He hadn't deleted the files. Then, one day in early fall, a package arrived at his new address. "I thought you might want to see her." Mark placed the photo on the table and stared at it for a long time. His emotions didn't come all at once. He didn't respond. He didn't send the letter back or reach out. Back in Texas, Lisa eventually moved out of the house. Lisa sometimes found herself scrolling through the folder where she kept old photos, ones of her and Mark from happier times. The story faded from the public eye as new scandals replaced the old. There were no reunions, no court battles, no final apologies spoken face to face. There was just distance and time. Mark lived the rest of his life far from the noise of his past. He never remarried. He never told anyone the full story. Some truths didn't need repeating. They just needed to be remembered.